Uh-oh.
Okay.
Rosemary's on.
Somebody's here.
Yeah, that's my colleague who was pestering me this morning about.
Well, we know it works. Yeah, I set it up so that people can join whenever they want to.
Okay, perfect.
So
She was sitting there like,
oh, and then we should do the share screen.
she
So
was sitting there licking her chops.
what you do. See where it says share screen?
Yep, so just do that.
And we just pick up. Where did your file go?
Just screen.
Ah, oh, hold on.
Probably do your.
There we go. I hate not having a mouse.
I know, isn't it terrible?
Launch meeting.
Oh, I think it's at the bottom.
Why did it come up twice? There we go. Okay. Gonna close this. Da, da, da. Okay. Share screen.
I think we have to do, oh, interesting. No, you know what I think? Wait, this one? Try the, no, because then they won't see me, right? Yeah, try this one.
Oh, yeah.
Try that one.
Let me. All right, we'll go back to share screen here.
The share screen. And then click on this one.
Yep,
and then
yep,
the
yep,
other
yep.
tab.
Exactly. And then I'll go back and I'll close this.
Yeah, that tab.
So it should.
And then can I go on
think-
that?
Yeah, as soon as I make sure. I'm gonna go back, see if I could just grab this like I want to see it. There we go. That's what I just wanted to make sure that's exactly what they were seeing. And then, yeah, you can go back to this one. Which one
No,
was it?
the far right one. Yeah.
This one.
Yeah. Slideshow.
There you go.
Perfect.
So you can see where you are, so you can orient yourself with the camera,
Perfect.
microphone. If you do get the videos going, you may want to put the microphone closer to the speaker.
Okay. I can do that.
Because yes.
I'll do a PSA for the videos.
That's perfect.
And,
Yeah, we may
we'll-
just cut them. Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah.
Awesome.
We'll go in the moment.
Yeah, so you should be all set and screen sharing, and I believe we're recording, so it'll,
See
when
my
you
nice
see it at the
hair,
end.
my nice hair loss.
Yeah.
Hair loss.
Oh. There we go. Oh. Nice to see you. My daughter's Hillary. Hi, how are you?
Sure.
It's funny, it's so hard to know.
Makes you much sure.
Oh, did you remember Stuart?
Yeah,
How are you?
yeah, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for being
How
here.
are you?
Great. Have you been in town for the holidays or?
No, wow, it's fun. I feel my numbers. Like, I was flying here and I had like it's very strange.
I remember shortly after that first sighting. This is the main wife. Oh, no, I can deal with that. How many do you have?
What games are we playing?
Right on the park.
Oh, yeah. Star of the yes. Well, thanks for coming. Yeah. She really
Yes, right. But when you go down the eastern edge, it's the border. On the other side, she battled in
Testing, testing. Is it? It's on? Okay, here we go. Happy New Year and welcome to the first Friday lecture of 2022. And we have a great speaker today, Hillary Cronheim, who grew up in the area, and she's had a lot of fun times here at Valencia. She's also had an amazing career path. When Hillary was about 4 years old, she figured out she wanted to be part of art museums and work in art museums. And she has accomplished that. She has worked at the Art Institute of Chicago and the Frick Collection in New York City. But then a few years ago, she decided to do something a little different. And she applied for a job near her New Jersey home at the United States Golf Association Museum. And today, Hillary is the director of the museum. And the USGA and Valencia have long-standing ties. Some of you know that we held the US Open here in 1906. We also held the US Amateur here in 1899. And we've held a few other events, the most recent being the Senior Men's Amateur in 1973. And as well, we've had 3 members who have been USGA presidents. And one of those members, George Blossom, came up with the idea of the museum that Hillary runs today. So we're going to hear from Hillary about, I think, joys and challenges of her job and many other great items. So Hillary, take it away.
Thanks, David. I can't see my face.
I'm just checking on exactly.
Well, thank you guys for having me. As my mother reminded me the last time I was in this room, it was my rehearsal dinner. And there was a projection screen and my siblings were projecting images of my poetry from 5th or 6th grade and reading it aloud to everyone. They thought it was very funny. I did not think it was so funny. But it's really great to be back. Thank you so much to David and Jed for having me. And, you know, Untitled holds a really, really special place in my heart for many reasons, some of which you'll learn. But I'm happy to see so many familiar faces. Happy to come and have a chance to visit my mom and also be able to talk about my job. And I'm hoping somewhere that my dad is watching and listening and would be here with all of us. So, because he's a big inspiration for us too. So I got that out of the way. Okay, perfect. Just a PSA before I start. I do have a couple of videos that Julie and I were testing earlier that may or may not work. So if they don't work, I'm happy to send them along and share them a little bit later. So just kind of walking you through what I'm going to chat a little bit about today. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background and how I got to the USGA. Why does someone who has an art history background end up running a golf museum? It's very, very strange. A little bit about the museum and what we do, and then finally what I'm hoping to do now. So our strategy and vision for the future. So as David said, I've always known that I wanted to work in museums. That's the one thing I knew from a very early age. I always listened to audio guides when we were going places, and I knew that that was going to be a professional direction for me. When I went to Lawrenceville, which is a private school in New Jersey, I recall for fun, I wrote a student's gallery guide to the Princeton Art Museum. And when I was home, I would actually spend time at the Lake Forest Library in the reading room researching. So it was something just germinated in me really early on. And after Lawrenceville, I went on to Cornell and majored in art history and was very involved there in the History of Art Major Society. Don't know if you guys know they had one. It's pretty cool. I was the president. And worked at the Johnson Museum of Art, which is a great museum, did some curatorial work there and worked for the registrar. And I knew again when I was at Cornell that I wanted to work in a museum. And at that time, the only path to do that was to really pursue a PhD in art history. So I attended Duke for my PhD and was interested at that time in the history of Dutch and Flemish art. I'll walk into a little bit about my work at Duke because that sort of connects there, but became really kind of captivated by the intersection of economics and art history at Duke, and that really guided how I spent the bulk of my time before I came to the USGA. So I spent a long time at Duke teaching undergraduates, which I have so much respect for teachers. That was by far the hardest job of my life, teaching the art history survey, and founded an initiative called the Duke Art Lawn Markets Initiative. So I'll talk about that too. In terms of my art historical background, I had the benefit also of working at some of the best museums in the world. As I said, I loved art history from an early age. Can you see the nerdy face I have? I started out at what was at the time the Terra Museum of American Art as a curatorial intern. And I was just wowed because I could, I was unpacking objects and putting things on walls. I mean, at that time, interns could really do things that most interns can't do now, but that was a really formative experience for me. And went on throughout college to work off and on with Suzanne McCullough at the Department of Prints and Drawings at the Art Institute, who was probably my greatest mentor in graduate school, and also worked in family programs and museum education. So I really have stepped in all different parts of museums, from visitor services education all the way through. When I was at Duke, I had the real privilege of working at the Frick Collection, which is one of my all-time favorite museums ever, and had a 2-month stint where the chief curator was not in his office. And for those of you who don't know, it should be different now with the Frick changing, but the second floor of the staff offices of the Frick were the Frick family home. So the chief curator's office was Mr. Frick's former study. So as an intern, I was sitting in an office with the best paintings in the entire collection that no one ever saw. So it was really a sort of a wow moment for me. And then I worked for a strategic fine arts consulting firm called BSJ Fine Art, which worked on kind of art markets and valuation, which was super interesting. But at Duke, we founded something called the Duke Art Law and Markets Initiative, which was really a kind of a research working group to talk about the economic forces in the art market. And I got really interested in that. I've known nothing about nothing. I mean, I'm a pure kind of art historian, but really got interested in the history of art markets. My area of focus was 15th to 18th century Dutch and Flemish art. So if you know anything about that time period, the art market is it's the most important factor. So it was kind of a natural evolution there. And that was a really interesting research group. I ended up sort of falling into this area on the 18th century Parisian auction market. So I studied auction catalogs specifically, and you can see from my graphs here, this is really the point in time that the art market explodes. This is the time in the 18th century where Christie's and Sotheby's and all these great auction houses are being founded and dealers are writing auction catalogs. So my research was very much focused on this period in time. So for my dissertation, I focused, sorry, just indulge me a minute. I promise we'll get to golf. It's related, but not right now. I really used these auction catalogs to talk about how this catalog was a major catalyst in market growth. And by using sort of economic tools and applying them to art history, I really argued that dealers used catalogs to drive the value of paintings in the market, and had a couple really interesting research questions, sort of what drove the prices of paintings, what were these marketing strategies, and what were people looking for? Happy to talk about this at length for hours, but I won't. But just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about and kind of what my research was, on the right, you'll see this painting by Wouwermans, this was the most expensive, most desired painting in the 18th century in Paris. And the catalog description on the left, which I've translated in the middle, you can see was very descriptive. So dealers would put specific words in the description that would indicate to the buyer certain figures that were represented or certain features. And I basically sort of ran these sort of interesting economic analyses of paintings. It was tremendously interesting. So how did I get to golf is what you're saying. I always knew I wanted to work in a museum, but I was a little bit conflicted, in sort of a traditional PhD path, you become an academic. And I knew from teaching that I didn't want to do that. I was looking for something else to do at that point in time. This is around 2014, 15. I had moved to New Jersey from living in France, working on my dissertation, and my husband played golf. This is about the time my family had gotten to play golf at Amwensia a bit. The idea was sort of germinating. I had played golf a little bit then, and there was a job opening at the USGA for a librarian to run the library. And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. At the time, the museum was run by my mentor, Rand Jarris, who had a PhD in art history. So I also thought that was really interesting. I was like, wait a second, a golf museum run by someone with a PhD in art history. So I applied, and I never expected I'd get the job, and I got it, and started on April 1st, 2015 was my first day. These are two images from my first day of work, I'm proud to say. The one on the left is the museum as it looked that day. It doesn't quite look like that now. We've taken some of the trees down. As you can see on the right, that one of the first things I did my first day was catalog the USGA library's collection of scorecards of Onwensia cards. So I was so proud. The Onwensia flag on the left, my dad gave me when I started my job, and it still hangs in my office today. So as I said, Onwensia has been a really important part of my journey. But I was a nerd from the beginning, and Onwensia played a big role in that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the museum, what we do. And but before that, I'll talk just a little bit about the USGA, because not everyone might know what the USGA is. So we are a not-for-profit organization based in Liberty Corner, New Jersey, originally founded on December 22nd, 1894 by 5 founding golf clubs, really founded to write the rules of golf and run a national championship. Those were really the primary reasons that the USGA was founded. We have numbers changed a little bit, but an executive committee, USGA member clubs, and volunteer committees that run our championships as well. Our mission is to champion and advance the game of golf, and the vision for the organization is a thriving, welcoming, and sustainable game. So one of the questions I get is, oh, you work for the PGA, you run the PGA championship, or, oh, I love the R&A. Just to give you a sense of where the USGA is in the golf industry landscape, probably best known for conducting the US Open and the US Women's Open. We run 14, next year soon to be 15 national championships. Earlier this year, we announced in July, the USGA is going to be hosting the US Adaptive Open for players with disabilities, which is so fantastic. We partner with the R&A to govern the game. So we write all the rules of golf. I'll talk about that a little bit too. And run the handicap system as well. And we have a whole segment of sort of research, public programs as well. But this gives you sort of sense of our colleagues and where we sit in the landscape. Let's see if my little sizzle video will play. Maybe not. I had a lovely little video. Okay, never mind. So today we're going to talk about the museum and celebrating the game's history, because that's the pillar that I fall under. This is one of the strategic goals of the organization. The video that I had outlined sort of the strategic pillars for the organization and what we do. Running championships, governing the game through writing the rules, deepening engagement through handicapping, creating opportunities for participation and advocacy for players, and celebrating the game's history. So the USGA has sort of demonstrated that golf history is of prime importance to the organization. So this is the pillar that I fall under. So what we do is honor and celebrate golf's history by collecting and preserving important historical artifacts and celebrating the stories of the game's great moments and champions. So now is probably the only time where you're like, okay, museum, golf, now it's coming. I get it. So I am not going to talk too much about the history of Onwensia and the amazing relationship that we have with you, because I'm mostly not qualified to do that. But as David said, the USGA Museum was established in 1936, so we are the oldest museum in sports. And it was, in fact, the idea of George Blossom, who was an Onwensia member, and at that time was on the USGA Executive Committee. And the thought was to have a space where we could talk about the game's great moments, great champions, and share this great game that we all love. So just to give you a snapshot of what we do at a high level, we say there are over 3 million individuals who have been informed and influenced by historical content that we produce. We have a world-class research library with over 100,000 volumes, over 1 million black and white and color photographs, and more than 20,000 visitors a year to all of our exhibits and programs. So we'll go a little bit more into each of these, but the museum has had a really interesting history. So it was originally founded in New York City. At that time, the USGA's headquarters were in New York City, and it was really a part of the offices. So you would walk into USGA headquarters and there was some display space. And as the organization grew and the evolution grew, the museum expanded as well when we moved out to Far Hills. You can see from the timeline, there were several discussions of moving the museum because I'm sure many of you were like, why are you in Liberty Corner, New Jersey? That's sort of an odd place. There were thoughts to move it to Monterey, California. At one point, the USGA actually purchased the Russian Tea Room in New York City and was going through a plan to make the Russian Tea Room the new museum. That project didn't work out actually for a very interesting reason, because museums in New York, the objects in those museums belong to the city and state of New York. So the USGA made a very strategic decision. We do not want our objects to be owned by the city and state of New York. So we will not make that. But it was, kind of an interesting moment in time. And then we had a major renovation and expansion in 2005 to 2008, where we added more than 16,000 square feet of gallery space and opened a couple new rooms in 2012 and 2015. This was about a month after I started. We had the opening of the Jack Nicklaus Museum. I was like, surely every day Jack Nicklaus is here walking through an exhibit. It was very strange. I was sort of a little bit starstruck, but just to give you a sense of what the museum and headquarters looked like around that time. So in 1951, they moved to East 38th Street. And this was the first kind of dedicated exhibit space that the museum had. I sort of imagine myself there, like reading a magazine among the artifacts. I assure you that's not what my job is like now, but I wish it was. But really beautiful, the objects were very much integrated into the space. So as people came through, they could read. And we have a great video, which I didn't include, but it's called Inside Golf House, where we have interviews of champions donating their objects to the museum. Because at that time, Francis Ouimet and Harriet Curtis and Finley Douglas, your 1899 US amateur champion, they were on the museum committee. So they're talking about donating their objects all in this space. So it's really quite interesting. In kind of around the late 60s, early 70s, the USGA is starting to expand. So the responsibilities that they're taking on are growing, and they're looking to move. And at that point in time, there was some thought about potentially running a golf course. That didn't end up playing out, but the USGA in 1972 purchased what was known as the Frothingham Estate, which is the building we're in now, a beautiful old historic home designed by John Russell Pope, who was best known for designing the National Archives, Jefferson Memorial, purchased this beautiful property in 300 acres to make as their headquarters for the entire association. So when they moved there, the entire USGA staff was in what's now the museum. The staff at that time was maybe 40 or 50. And these are just, I included some old images of what the house looked like at the time, right before the USGA bought it. And if you've had the benefit of going to the museum, we've still tried to retain some of that old architectural feel. And we actually have visitors who will come who have no interest in golf, but are interested in the architecture of the home, because we've tried to retain that feel. But for those of you who have been to the museum, the photo on the upper right is currently our Bob Jones room, right to the left as you walk in. And on the bottom right is the Ben Hogan room. So in 2005, we shut down the museum to do a complete renovation and expansion. We moved into a historic home that did not have any climate control, major humidity issues. You're seeing again the museum golf connection. And the USGA added 16,000 square feet of gallery space, a state-of-the-art climate control storage facility, and completely rethought the way in which visitors experience the history of golf. Previously, the history of golf was told through equipment. So the history of the feather ball era to the gutta percha era to the wound ball era. Well, that's not interesting if you're not a golfer, and I golf and I didn't find it that interesting. So we sort of talked about the history of golf in the context of American social and cultural history, which is how we talk about it today, to make it really more captivating for those who are, dragged by their husband or brother or sister who may not be golfers, but everyone can find something to relate to. And in 2012, we added the, as I like to say, the first room dedicated to a woman at the USGA, Mickey Wright, who was certainly the greatest female player of all time, arguably one of the best golfers of all time. And in 2015, as I mentioned, one of my first days, the Jack Nicklaus room in 2015. So a little bit about the museum. Our staff and our responsibilities are really divided into three main areas: collections, public programs, and research and scholarship. So our collections form the foundation for literally everything that we do. We have a museum collection that's over 80,000 objects cataloged in the collection, a library of over 100,000 volumes in more than 25 languages, a film and video archive, and a photography collection as well. And that collection really informs any public programs that we do and any scholarship that we write. So it really forms the basis for everything. We have 5 strategies. So this is sort of our guiding pillar, the things that we're trying to achieve. So trying to continue to strengthen the world's premier collection maintained at the highest standards. It's not only good enough for us to have the best collection, it has to be maintained at the highest standards. So that's where our museum background comes in. To deliver a robust calendar of public programs to a global audience, and leveraging digital media to expand our engagement with collections, expanding our physical presence to reach a greater audience, and to establish the museum as the world's leading center for scholarship on the history of the game. So I'll walk you through a little bit of our strategies and kind of what we do. In collections, again, we really focus on providing exceptional collections care. I always say, my staff and I, we are museum professionals first. Our highest and most important responsibility is to care for the objects that are in our collection, because if we don't care for them, they won't be there long after we're gone. In addition to collecting objects on the history of the game, we act as the repository for institutional history for the USGA. So we house the founding documents of the association. After the US Open is played, there's no greater day for me than when the US Open scorecards are physically delivered to the library, because you cannot imagine what happens, in between. Our championships are run by people who don't have backgrounds in research or archives. So I've had scorecards that have gotten lost. Anyway, we build our collections through acquisition and donation, and enable access to historical materials for research and scholarship, and then use those artifacts for exhibits, content, and public programming at different. So most of the items that we have in our collection are irreplaceable, one-of-a-kind objects that really give a tangible connection to our champions, our venues, and moments. I picked 6 of the most iconic objects that we have. If sort of people ask, what are the greatest in your collection? On the far left is the women's amateur trophy, which is the oldest trophy in the collection and everyone's favorite. If you've seen it, it's kind of leaning to the side a little bit. The Moon Club. Last year was the anniversary of the Moon Club. Not sure if any of you know the story. Alan Shepard, who was a voracious golfer, snuck a head of a 6-iron, screwed onto the shaft of a tool used to collect lunar rock samples, stuffed it in a sock with 2 golf balls, put it up his suit in 1971, and hit 2 golf balls on the moon. This is by far our visitors' most iconic artifact. There are just not that many things that have been to the moon and come back. So this is really a showstopper. I had an opportunity last year to take it out of the case and brought it to Winged Foot for the NBC broadcast, and just like there was a weird holding the Moon Club. It was very strange, but pretty cool. Ben Hogan's 1-iron from the 1950 US Open at Marion. Ben Hogan in 1949 gets in this terrible car accident. Most people don't think he's going to be able to walk again, and uses this club to hit the most iconic shot probably in US Open history. This club, I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever hit a 1-iron. I can't not hit a 1-iron. This thing has a wear spot that's about the size of a quarter right near the hosel. And one of the most weird experiences I had was when I took some of these artifacts to the reunion of champions at Pebble Beach in 2019. We had a dinner with the amateurs at Cypress Point, and I was bringing out the 1-iron, and the amateurs were like, oh my God, could you imagine hitting enough 1-irons to make a wear spot? And look how close it is to the hosel. This object, for some reason, has sort of a mystique about it. People really love it. And it was actually after that tournament, the club and Hogan shoes were stolen out of his locker at Marion. And a golf collector found the club and shoes in a garage sale about 30 years later, and Hogan donated them to the museum. Pretty amazing story. Next, we have Arnold Palmer's visor from 1960. There's some amazing footage of Arnold throwing the visor up in the air. At that time, it's caught by the son of the superintendent at Cherry Hills, Skip Manning, who keeps it for about 30 years and donates it to us when we redo the museum in 2008. And the fun part about that one was we actually didn't know the visor was red because all of our footage was in black and white. So that was kind of fun. That artifact, as you can see, has been well loved and went on a lot of travels after Arnie passed away. We took that one out a bit. Calamity Jane, the famous putter that Bob Jones used to win 11 national titles and the Grand Slam, probably the most iconic putter in golf. Again, I could not imagine putting with the thing. It's crazy. And finally, the inaugural US Open medal from 1895, which is just beautiful. I assure you, the champions do not get a medal like this today. So these are sort of our well-known artifacts, but these are some of the artifacts that you might not know we have. So it's really also the depth and the breadth of our collections that make them the most comprehensive. So on the left, we have the founding documents for the USGA. This is for all the library nerds out there like me. You know, the written words, why did these clubs get together to form this amazing organization? Really the insight into this exciting governing body. Never mind. We have a mashie that belonged to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Most people didn't know that he was an avid golfer before he was paralyzed by polio. We have a set of golf clubs and head cover that belonged to Amelia Earhart. Many people didn't know Amelia Earhart played golf. Babe Didrikson Zaharias, probably one of the greatest athletes of all time, won a gold medal in the 1936 Olympics in track and field. We have her harmonica. We have the contestant badge from Anne Gregory, who was the first African-American woman to play in a USGA championship from 1956. A driver head found at the site of Ground Zero, at the site of the September 11th attacks. And one of our more recent artifacts. So artifacts from John Rahm's win at 2021. I also have in the collection, but I couldn't include a picture of, and I got this personally from Jason Gore's office himself, the caddy bib that Mike Davis wore while caddying for Jason Gore in the 2021 US Open. I don't know if anyone saw that, but it's kind of a fun moment. Mike Davis is going out, and anyway, those are the kind of nerdy things that we collect. We have collections priorities. So in general, we're looking again to talk about legendary champions, iconic venues, really these signature moments in American golf history. More specifically, we're very focused on early Americans women's golf and golf's diverse contributors. And we acquire artifacts through donation or purchase. We do buy things at auction, which is always very interesting, highly stressful. Happy to talk about that if anyone's interested, but really since our founding, we've acquired more than 92% of our artifacts through donation. So it's really, the museum didn't purchase our first artifact until 1969. So like most museums, we've relied on the support of not only champions, but collectors to really help us build our collection. In 2018, I think, or 19, Golf Magazine featured the museum as one of the coolest spots in golf, which is fun because, you know, the museum we don't always get a feature in Golf Magazine. I mean, Golf Magazine does a lot of coverage of the USGA, but for us to have the whole feature about the museum was really exciting. So hopefully this video will play because they did a little, no, it won't. Well, I can send it along later. They did a 3 or 4 minute video where they talked about where I talk and Rosemary Maravats, who's our curator of collections, talk about the different objects that we have in the collection. So you can get a greater sense of the types of things that we collect. So sorry, that's not working. Public program. So we use really our collection to invite visitors to experience golf on site through the lens of history. Just got my little thing out of the way. By creating exhibits and offering special educational and custom designed programs for various groups to engage with content. So under a non-COVID time, my colleague Rosemary would be here with me because we had a plan to bring some of the objects that we have from Unwensia's championships here. But we had sort of a COVID thing. So in a lot of cases, we will bring objects to host clubs. So we have, of course, our visitor experience at Liberty Corner, but outside of that, we really provide a lot of different programs. So exhibits, artifact loans to clubs, museums, host sites. This is just a map of, as you can see, really, we try to take the objects out of the museum as much as possible now, understanding that not everyone has the benefit of coming to the museum. So trying to do a lot of different things by giving talks and talking about histories of clubs, book signings, lectures, tours, things like that. One of the coolest experiences that I've had that I'd love to chat about is in 2019, the USGA decided to host a reunion of champions. This was a dinner. Again, I'm a museum person. I'm not a golfer. This is a dinner at Pebble Beach with 33 of the 36 living US Open champions. So the photo on the bottom, that's a photo I took when I was like running outside. I think probably if you're a golfer, it's sort of a wow moment, but for me it was. So the goal was kind of to bring them together. No one from the USGA was there. They were behind kind of closed doors, but we were asked to bring some artifacts to the champions from historic US Opens. So on the top right, you can see, I'm showing Rory McIlroy. This has become, unfortunately, for the museum, this has become like the image for when the USGA talks about the museum. It's like my face and Rory McIlroy, which I don't appreciate much, but showing him the 1896 US Open medal. Our junior curator of collections, Kylie, showing Jeff Ogilvie, Francis Ouimet's putter from 1913. And then you can see Kylie talking to Martin Keimer and Michael Campbell. So it was fun. We were sort of standing in a room and the players were having a cocktail hour and they would come in and look at the objects, and it was funny. And then they had a dinner and they closed the doors and we could hear, of course, because we were staying there with the objects, and they were talking about what it meant for them to win a US Open. And, you know, Tom Watson was standing up and talking about what his US Open win meant, and Jack Nicklaus. And then they were all, at the end, they all walked out and I'm like, and I should have included a picture of this, but they had a display of gifts for the players. And in front of each gift was the image of the player with their trophy, you know, when they won their US Open. And it was so funny as they were walking out, you know, Jack would say to Gary, "Oh, look, Gary, you looked so fat when you won your US Open," or "You haven't aged very well." And they were sort of yapping. And they ended up staying, Jordan Spieth and Brooks Koepka and Rory McIlroy stayed for hours. It was a pretty wild experience. I don't think this will play either, but at that championship, we also set up the artifacts. This is a snapshot of me in the media center at the US Open, which media centers look a little different now in the post-COVID era, but giant, massive tent with 400 or 500 media members, and gave them the opportunity to come and look at the objects. And also had the opportunity to bring the objects onto at that time, the Fox broadcast. So for us, this is a public program at the highest level, just because it really reaches the number of people we can reach by having our objects on the broadcast is significant. So we've been successful in doing that the past couple of years, which is fun to see our museum nerds hats go, yes, history is being shared. And finally, research and scholarship is our third area where we focus our time. So we really use the collection and primarily the library to provide a historical context for organizational decision-making. and our team provides material for and does a lot of fact checking for senior leaders, any press releases that are being put out, communications content. We respond to now it's close to 2,000 internal and external requests annually from anyone from, someone from Golf Digest writing a story on something to someone coming into the library and saying, my grandfather played in the 1952 US Open. Do you have his, scoring record or whatever it is? And creating content for websites, social media platforms, and USGA industry publications. One of the main things and one of the most important things that the museum and our history team does is provide historical context for major initiatives that are happening at the USGA. So remember I mentioned rules and I was sort of traumatized. One of my other early assignments when I was in the library was in the work up to the rules modernization project, which happened in 2018. And I was working with our senior historian. I was in the library at the time, working with our senior historian, Victoria Neno, and we had to come up with every rules change for each rule, kind of every rules change for that rule in history. Well, I don't know if anyone knows the rules or like the rules. I don't know the rules. I don't like the rules. It was extremely challenging and sort of distilling it down to a 1 or 2 pager that we could pass along to the organization and the team that were actually doing the rules modernization. This happened most recently with the Distance Insights project. So we were very involved in writing the Distance Insights report and statement of conclusions by providing historical data for golf course lengths. It's really our library that keeps access to all that data and allows us to do that research. So you can see on the right, just a sense of the types of questions that we work on for the organization. So anything related to changes in format, cancellations of championships. And we take tremendous pride in doing that for the organization because we want to make sure that we're operating with historical and factual accuracy. In addition, our collection really provides endless content for USGA and external channels. So we, up on the top left, we have our US Open history timeline, which is built exclusively from the museum's images and artifacts, our video footage, and then things like Instagram content or other social videos is informed also through our history team. We also have a couple really interesting scholarship projects on the horizon right now. The first is the African American Golf History Archive. So this is a project that we have been working on for the past 7 years, really chronicling the African American experience in the game of golf. This archive has a couple of different divisions, the most interesting of which is the newspaper division. So we have a staff member who is taking historically Black newspapers. We've completed the Baltimore Afro-American. We're now working through the Chicago Defender, which is the largest Black newspaper. And he's collecting every mention of golf in that paper and creating a finding aid. And this is amazing for us to be able to tell the story of the African-American golf experience, the way in which African-Americans spoke about their experience, and running that in parallel to what was being written in Golf Magazine, Golf Illustrated. This is a tremendously important project for us that we're really excited about. And the image on the right is a copy of our most recent publication. It was just published the 1st of November, called Swing Time, which is a history of golf and music based on the museum's sheet music collection. So most people would expect in the library that we collect instruction books and club histories and biographies, but we have some really exceptional collections, and sheet music is one of them. So this is now the most comprehensive survey of sheet music. And this was the purchase, the cost of publishing and printing this book was donated to us. So 100% of the proceeds from the sale of this book go to support the work of the museum, which is absolutely fantastic. So it's the first in a model of some other book projects that we're working on to try to generate some more money for the museum. So what does this all mean? You've learned a little bit about the museum and a little bit about me. So what's my hope? What's my goal? Where do I want us to go? My goal is to bring the museum to the level of the organizations that you see here, which is no tall feat. We are already the best golf museum. We are arguably the best sports museum, but that's not good enough for me, at least in our team. We want our collections care, our public programs, our scholarship to be of the level of these institutions. So this is kind of our brand vision slide when we try to think about where we're going to go. And then also for me, kind of coming full circle from where we started, what does this mean for me, I think, or where am I going? It's been a really crazy journey, I have to say, but I'm entering kind of a whole new phase of things that I'm learning and things that I have to work on. So one of them is expanding the museum's physical reach. So I'll talk in a minute about our new plans for Golf House Pinehurst, which some of you may have heard of. Really leveraging external media to reach a geographically diverse audience. Luckily for me, the large clip of me on Golf Channel will not play for you today. But really kind of entering a new phase of putting my face in front of the camera and the TV is something, again, I from having been in a library, I never thought that would happen. And also working to help secure the museum's financial future. By the way, this Golf Week article, just as a side, in March of last year for Women's History Month, one of the reasons I was on Golf Channel was our museum is run entirely by an all-female staff, which I'm very proud of. And so there was a lot of content about that. So I always like to just do a little check. So Golf House Pinehurst, in terms of expanding our physical presence, in September of 2020, the USGA announced that they were going to open a satellite location in Pinehurst. They announced Pinehurst Resort would be the first anchor site for the US Open. So the USGA is committed to 5 US Opens at Pinehurst over the next several years, as well as a commitment to increase USGA championships in the state of North Carolina for the amateur championships and the junior championships. In addition to that, the USGA is building 2 buildings. For those of you who know Pinehurst, if you know Carolina Vista, which is on your way towards the clubhouse, there's some tennis courts that are on the right. This is the space in which these 2 buildings will be built. This is an image from what the proposed architecture is. Unfortunately, fortunately, I know a lot more than this. I can't share it yet because there's a lot still in the works, but you can see kind of what the look and the feel of the buildings will be like. It's been a tremendously interesting and educational process for me. I know nothing about building a building, but working through zoning and planning, and obviously in a town like Pinehurst, going through the Historic Preservation Commission, they care tremendously what the outside of the building looks like. They could care less what the inside looks like, but care very much what the outside looks like. So you can see sort of what the campus will be like with these large porches and rocking chairs, very much like Pinehurst is now. So we'll be building 2 buildings. One will be a headquarters, an administrative headquarters, really for our championships operations team. There's a group of them that's already down there pretty significantly. So that's the group, well, it is what it sounds like, that runs the operations, sort of the outside of the ropes for the US Open. And in that building, there'll also be the research and test center. So that will be moved completely from Liberty Corner down to Pinehurst. And then the second building, which somehow I'm now in charge of leading, is, for lack of a better term, what will be called the Usga Experience. So a welcome visitor center, a way to introduce visitors to the work of the USGA, what we do, why we do it. So it'll be sort of a museum. It is a museum, but we'll have a couple spaces where you can learn about our work in championships, about science of golf, and then we'll have a little satellite mini museum as well, and a really rich educational landscape. So this is a tremendously exciting project for me. I'm learning a lot about, lights and paving stones, and it's sort of bringing in a new part of my brain, which is fun. my enhanced external media presence. I'm sure my mom's sitting there like, yay. And hopefully my dad would think this is kind of fun too. I've now had the benefit, I guess, I wouldn't call it benefit, of being in the media quite a bit. In fact, in December, I got an interesting email from our director of communications when Lee Elder passed away. Janine said to me, Mike Wan can't be on Golf Channel today to talk about Lee Elder, so you're going to do it. I'm like, oh, great. So the truth is, this is now my reality to sort of be the voice of history for the organization. Not the voice of history for the organization, but one of the voices. So I have a great team who's helping me certainly come up with the historical information that I need, but also challenging myself to not be afraid to go in front of the camera and do things like this. Very challenging. Again, very pleased this piece isn't going to run. About my golf channel here. And third is to secure the museum's financial future. So this is also an important strategic area for me. The USGA has the benefit of being a part of the greater organization, but we don't have a membership program. We don't have a fundraising program. You can see from our graphs, a large part of what we do is really sort of operational costs. So a lot of my job is going to be going out, talking to people, about the work that we do, trying to share why it's important for the USGA, for the game, and try to raise money for the museum so we can continue to do what we're going to do, what we'd like to do. Part of that is collections stewardship as well. So I'm still having fun. Does anyone recognize who this is? No? So this is Kathy Whitworth, who, I don't know if that name rings a bell. Kathy Whitworth is the winningest player ever on the LPGA. She won 88 times. This is a recent photo. Rosemary and I went down to visit her in Texas. And yes, we took a selfie with her in a golf cart. But my new role is also to visit players, talk to them about the museum, why we're interested in telling their story, particularly with people like Kathy, who's not a USGA champion, but has an immensely important role in the history of golf. I probably won't take selfies with all of them, but this was a little bit of a wow moment. On the left, you can see there's an amazing display in her club with little 88 drawer pulls and trophies. So that's kind of fun. Here's my little fun pitch. If you or anyone that you love or know would be interested in supporting the work of the museum and everything that we do, we'd always love and welcome that support. It goes towards helping us being able to do everything, care for the collection, acquire things for the collection, take things on the road. And we always appreciate that. So that's my spiel. I just want to thank you guys so much for inviting me again. Aunt Wency is a really special place. I was sort of humbled and honored when everyone asked if I could come. So at that point, if it's okay, I'll open it up if anyone has any questions. Sorry, I did that kind of fast.
Any questions for Hillary?
Yes.
Yes, Steve.
What was the first item that you acquired by auction in 1969?
Oh, I have no idea.
That's not something.
But I think Rosemary is watching at home. So Rosemary, we'll have to figure that one out. I'm not sure. The golf memorabilia market is crazy. I don't know if anyone knows Green Jacket auction, now Golden Age auctions, golf auction. People are acquiring things at a rapid rate and it's expensive. So there used to be a point in time where players and collectors would donate their objects to us. That's not happening. They're still donating, but much less so than before. They're going to auction just because things are going crazy. I think 3 months ago, Tiger Woods backup Scotty Cameron putter. So a backup putter he never used or never touched sold for $345,000 at auction. It's just, it's crazy. That's not a particular object that we'd acquire, but we often do lose out on objects because we just have a limited acquisitions budget. So it's always an interesting and stressful adventure, kind of monitoring those auctions.
Did you guys get a Rockwell?
We tried to acquire a Rockwell. One of the, when I first got there, there was a painting for sale by Norman Rockwell called The Golfer. So we have a really amazing fine art collection, and we do have a Rockwell. And I should say, actually, that's another sort of interesting strategic focus for me to try to build the fine art collection because of my background. But the Rockwell for sale was for sale from the gallery for $5 million, which is, there's no way we can, I mean, that's far beyond. And it went into private hands. So a lot of times we won't see things like that again.
Yeah.
Hillary, are you able to kind of coordinate private collections that clubs maintain themselves with the museum? You think of some of the older clubs you're familiar with around the country, and certainly in the Chicago district, there's a lot of artifacts and trophies and material, et cetera. Is that, what awareness does the museum have? Is there any interplay with those clubs in terms of how that's managed?
Absolutely, a ton. A ton. It's a good question. So I'll just use like John Moran at Chicago Golf Club as an example. If Chicago Golf Club has an amazing history and historian. So if someone comes to us in the library and asks us a question about Chicago Golf Club, I'll often send them to John. We do have a shared knowledge about what we have in the museum and the library versus what the club has. We do try to do some sharing, digital sharing of content, and try to help each other out as much as possible. I mean, the truth of the matter is we at the library can't be the premier experts on Onwensia's history because we just don't have the capacity and the bandwidth to do that, but it behooves us to, build those relationships and help boost the archives. So we do have a working group called the Club Historians Roundtable that we've been kind of germinating and trying to get up and running, which is exactly what it sounds like. Kind of the names of the major club historians at clubs throughout the country, just to be able to connect with each other and do some sharing of best practices and information. So we try to do that a lot as much as we can.
Anyone else? Yes, Nick, go ahead.
Just following up on Jeff's question, you mentioned that you showed a picture of Kathy Whitworth home club in the display. I've seen number of clubs have tried to accumulate their own artifacts and try to display them. Some with success, some with less success. If a club want to be successful, how would they go about it? Would you be helpful? Is somebody else? Is Roundtable helpful?
Sure, that's the goal of the Club Historians Roundtable, to give guidance on ways in which clubs can work on building their own archive. So we also have a really close relationship with John Capers, who's the archivist at Marion. He's one of our museum committee members. Marion is one of the best club archives anywhere. Not that anyone has to be Marion, but we do, so there's a group of kind of club historian professionals, for lack of a better term, I would say, that do that. But then we as the museum really often and constantly advise on, climate control, sort of the nerdy museums, not nerdy, the important museum stuff. Don't put your original photos and paper on display. Make sure that everything's a reproduction. This is where you should get it matted and framed and all that kind of stuff. So we have the capability to help with that. And if there's a certain topic or area, we certainly have a lot of people in our world who can help. John and I were talking earlier about David Normoyle, who's a former staff member at the USGA who now does a lot of consulting like that. So we have a group of people that can help with that too, if we don't do it ourselves specifically.
Nick, did you have a question?
Yeah, just not to put you on the spot about Michael Wong, but Mike Davis with the USGA for so long, and he's got Michael Wong. What kind of energy or how does that feel? He comes from kind of the championships background. Are you feeling is it spread across the entire organization, or again, not to try to put you on the spot.
No, it's fine.
Dig any dirt on Michael, but are you feeling some enthusiasm and whatnot from his addition to the USGA?
Yeah, definitely. It's a bit of a sea change. I don't know if you've seen Mike Wan, he's got a lot of energy. He will say he's like highly caffeinated, very energetic. I came back from maternity leave, or took a temporary piece of maternity leave to give Mike a tour of the museum. And the best way I can describe Mike as in my circumstance was sort of engaged but distracted. And I mean that in a good way. When I was taking him around and talking about the museum, he was listening, but he was also like really thinking, I think, about how, okay, I'm sort of processing this history, but what does that mean for me and what's happening? And I think that's happening at the organization a lot. Just as Mike kind of gets his feet wet, there's going to be a lot of change and a lot of good change. I don't know if probably no one did. There's a press release this morning. Now the US Women's Open has a presenting sponsor. Mike's, he's a tremendous, amazing supporter of women and women's golf. So that's a benefit to us in the museum and is a great, respects history. So far so good. I think it's going to be a change. I love Mike Davis dearly. I mean, mostly because Mike Davis would go in front of people and talk about our like climate control and HVAC in the museum as such a point of pride. And Mike wants just a different character. So he doesn't have as much of a familiarity with the museum, but certainly a respect for the game. So it'll be an evolving journey, I think, but a good one. I think he'll do good things for the game.
Anyone else? Well, Hillary, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You really do it all at the museum. Fascinating presentation. Next time we'll have you in the summer so you can play golf after. Probably not good to play today.
I don't think you want to.
Yeah.
I don't play much golf now.
But thanks so much. That was really interesting and insightful. So we really appreciate you coming and doing that. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
A lot of information.
Yeah, I remember you saying that you loved it so much. Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. So I'm so glad I was thinking that. I was saying to myself, I love the illustrations. But I love that Was it coffee or water?
No.
Yeah, you guys have nice work. I got your Christmas card, you guys were. Oh, that's so great. And you have a whole gang here. Yeah. Oh, that was fine.
No, this was.
Did they drive straight?
Okay.
Oh, so good to see you.
Right.
When are you flying back? Tomorrow. I was gonna raise my hand and ask you like some really embarrassing questions. And I remember I was like, wait, there are like people online that's like listening. I can't.
Well, you know, from here, Randy, my daughter, is married to Douglas Gibbons' grandson. Was, and then it was a terrible marriage. He was a terrible guy. And he went. It was a writer, well-known, married to Visor. Woman was either a Visor, I think it was a Visor. And the kid came out, he was kind of red haired. And the other two were dark haired. Anyway, they were long divorced.
When are you leaving? Tomorrow, I was like 3. What are you doing? We're gonna do some. Okay, well, text me. Yeah, maybe I'll come. Can I swing by and see you guys? Can I bring Callie with me? So I'm trying. So are you gonna have to get like an agent, like makeup artist? We're gonna be texting when you're on. Especially if you get callers in public. And
No, I just noticed a line, or still noticed a line. Well, and it's a little bit more. I didn't spend a lot of time for stuff. Yeah, sure. Well, thank you.
Yeah, they're fine on Facebook. She loves it. Chris joined, her husband, across the mountain out of the south.
gotta go out the one now and exchange.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So now you want to go to the last one?
Yeah. I just wondered as much as, like, is he so golf focused if he would really get so into it, like a golf nerd like me? I use the history to try to drive the ball.
I will say, he respects the history. He doesn't know much about it.
Yeah.
Not challenge, but where Mike was like.
He's not gonna get stuck in the open slot. Like, we don't,
I mean,
that's why we always go. So.
Every like game that we had, and I think maybe not this, but it's like, well, this is a new, show. You don't want to figure it out.
And he's aggressive. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he is. Is he from Maine?
Yeah.
I talked to him about Masters last year, just briefly, but that was the first time. We had talked once, we'd met once before, he would never remember. I just he was walking past and I just pulled him aside, chat. But he was definitely around. He was in the middle. So.
He's made like a
It's killing me here. I want to we come back here so bad. We can't do it. We get right there. We can't do it. We just don't have enough. We've been after right now. It's on the sheet. Tell us about your membership. We have everything about it. We can't do it. We can't get over the ribbon. Even engage. I've had these conversations with that site visits. We've done always. When Diana was the president, she was here for meetings a couple of years. She got the thing started. She was on the future sites committee, trying desperately, but I can't. We don't do it. No, I right. Yeah, it's just, it's just.
It's like.
They just want to change. And it's just too bad, because we have it. We can't do it just a we can't do it. Maybe do it in the US examiner. Like, so that one examiner trophy, we got the US trophy forever.
Right now.
Because we had that committees 2 years. Maybe 3. We had 3 things. And I said, can I please number this? I sent one email and I had 45 minutes. I said, but you have to think about where you're gonna put it. It's not just about acquiring the trophy, you have to think about where you're gonna put it. Still is. Right? And if you do, I'm sure we're trying. That's why David Sweet's going to be a champion for us. They do. Here's our challenge: is the folks that are in charge. It's just beautiful. If they understand the course. Our offense, our our shop is old, the whole space is old. We need that space. Make that the feature. We need walk something like that. Use that old hallway and fill it up full stuff and walk them through a journey that's your from the entrance. Working on so bad. So bad. It's so beautiful. That's why we could get a, you know, Nick Linton calls me every November. You get that trophy. We can see her in, we can get the girls together, which are you gonna get? But that women's in our house. I've got the associate. We get the whole amateur trophy. Yeah, really cool. And we can get the miniature Walker Cup trophy as well. So we've been approved for all along. It's just. Because you know this, and this is, you know, so I've known David Morrell for several years, and he's always got great like thoughts that really give me kind of like this. But he said something to me once, so what happens? But there's tradition, there's tradition. With the tradition, you use what the vision was to make the decisions moving forward, and the tradition doesn't necessarily think it's supposed to be the way it wasn't. Think about it's not very much to go through it's not because they're trying to be spirited or just because it's just that they just don't see more time. There it is, and it's too bad that there's 90% of the folks are down south. If you can come back in the summer, that would be really, really good. Because I think it's so, we could have a huge fun dinner for that in the spring, whenever you could be. Yeah, if we can, anytime you're coming back. Do it. As often as you're willing to do it. Yeah, it's probably. Or just over a week somewhere. Sort of, not really. I don't guide them a lot more than that. But I have to see just a little bit. Yeah, it's so cool. I love that spot. And just the contribution to have our original. I don't know if somebody took from us. I haven't did it because since they don't know anything. So we had a winter club trophy between Chicago and Valencia from 1896. And imagine that. They had to be really early. And all the stuff I read about it, it's like they have to do quiz because of divided family. It's called like H.G. Wayne and all these guys. So you read it. But everybody wants to do one. But father's connection and all that stuff.
Do you look for stuff with the auction?
A little bit. Like the green jacket thing, those guys are just crooks. I mean, that after action, it's just such fun. They jacket. It's so when I bought a thing once, before they were really big, I got a little thing called, it was a packet. It was stable. There was apparently the recommendation letters for Harry Cole to be secretary of the Army in 19. And then about 3 years ago, that same thing popped up again. I'm like, wait a minute. Well, there's probably multiple Sure. Yeah, I don't know. But it's just- I go through that a little bit. We played here, yes, so we played here this summer. He's fun. He's super
That's right,
fun.
I think he posted up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he and, so the guy that I work for, my direct green jacket is Charlie Yates. So, Charlie got me, just a contract. So I get a little geeky with Mr. Yates. Well, because, his, obviously, his dad. So that's how I'm common. So common is common.
Yeah, it's always interesting. Sometimes that pops up.
I'm desperate, I think I told you, I'm desperate to find a photograph. Federated Harry Barton, like Tom Barton and William Marshall here, 3 weeks to the day before the playoff in Brooklyn. It was in the, found that article in the newspapers on that, I just cannot for the life of me imagine. I would hope that it would. Most guys are on such a roll into, I reached out to, who did I reach out to, wrote the match. Yeah, Mark Frost, through Twitter, I post on, because you can't find anywhere to contact. That would be great. I would love to find, because I sent him a statement. I'm desperate to find, when you're doing your research on the tour that Barton and Ray, you were writing the Grand Slam, did you come across anything that was in a photograph of their team?
We got help for, yeah, I actually got more together. Yeah. We did a USGA club.
Oh my gosh.
And we got a great one for Jim, and then we did like author talk.
Oh, super
So we
fun.
like so one of course to come into the yeah, we're going to course. We're getting ready. We got the best of the bags. I mean, everyone already is like, I want this for the gas because they're at the tent. And tears was there, we were hiring. Believed them on umbrella. There was all this. They were like, oh my God, these so like there was any, such. Whatever, but I think she.
I've read. That's my in-laws live in Oklahoma, Arkansas, so I was listening to the 10-hour drive, I was listening to the Grand Slam, which I hadn't read. I've got the book and I just got the book for table. Just the audio. It's really, when I hear all those names, it's just crazy. They're all here.
I know. It's almost.
He's fantastic. He's really great to us. Anytime he comes across anything, pops up. Mr. John is doing the same thing. He's got the bug. And he's trying to find some things that are really interesting.
I mean, I'm happy to help. That relation.
I'm constantly here. They're so tired. Retired people. The trophy thing.
Can you imagine?
It's on.
Do you have any space? I don't so many spaces where you
Well, so I'm gonna clear it. I've been walking on steps. There's a park right
I'll text you.
We had.
And I'm sorry, I bet.
Like town halls. And you could create a trip piece within the wall, have only access from the back. Not to live daylight out of the door. Lighting. So that's it.
Do you guys have one?
Only to 1912 or 13. They lost. The other ones, I don't know, they were on fire, but they only have that just didn't have whole book. There's some really great ones. And yeah, I use that to try to. Okay, so here on can we do Iron School? Okay, so the story with this is that they donated this trophy and they wanted to play over Memorial Day. And this is the format that they wanted. We need to go back to this format. Not pick your pairing and play whatever you want. This is the format that the board decided on in 2013. This is what we should do. So things like that. There's great old things about renegotiating Towers contract and all that. And then all the architects that have been here, this guy and that guy, this.
Competitive part, I was looking because I was doing service life. I was really old, which is like a club house, it's just like the evolution of the physical, the club.
Right.
Like,
So that's a great idea. What a cool.
Like when I first did my talk, like the origins of Untitled were on the property that I grew up in, and like, which is here, we all like there's such a. Didn't care about that, but I think it's like.
That's what I'm saying. The first golf that was played in Chicago wasn't played at Jackson Park. There was a couple Scottish guys hitting golf balls down. They didn't play off to a target and put the ball in a hole and sell fair. So they did it. So CP did that at Seminole. So like we're trying to do a par 3 course over here in the woods next 18, and I wanted to get 7 holes. So we changed. We used to have 6 holes on the putting green, but we changed it to 7, so we could talk about, well, this is why, and 7 holes, and this is why, and then it leads back into Fargo State. But we do it. We would try. In theory, we do a 7-hole par 3 course with CB McDonald's green complexes, and that would be like our. That would be our CB McDonald.
I gotta come back. Nick, I want to do this call first, but I can only, I don't think it's the thing.
It's very different. It's
I
very
heard.
different. Our secret's
Doesn't have a
so
little
different.
we can.
It's getting there. Yeah, those green expansions and the, the raw affairs and stuff. Our secret's just awesome. He's a wonderful guy. This is going to be a big year for us. We're going to retire the next year, so we're going to change. Yeah. So we're going to change, the way that the outside operations run now. We're going to service thing. That will extend into the golf shop. And then that will extend into here. So we're just going to try to make it really neat.
Right.
Instead of that.
Well, there's a delight, I love
Art
seeing
show.
it every day, there's a delight to work with. Michael is very big.
I think that
First, I was like.
but I think that they know what it's setting. And I get it, but we need to. So, we're more excited. That's so good. Enthusiasm. Our young group. Thank goodness you can see.
Is the number should be together? He does. I had a friend that is which is working through sunset. And I was showing them out my session. Right, which is nice.
Well, we had a nice rush.
So
Not
now,
as much as other folks in
I
here,
mean,
because
to me,
we're still very tight
I
on the
was
process.
so,
But everybody that had it in Chicago. So we got a lot of young families, lots of some really good players and young players. We Joe McGowan's won the championship 13 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be good for some chance. I gotta do it 2 o'clock Zoom call with my DJ officers. Thanks for coming back and appreciate it. Thanks for So- I love the artificial community. I think that's something.
I'm pretty sure where that worked out on there. I'm going to here, to probably for fun. Oh my gosh.
Cool. I'll keep it. Because it doesn't have to be a Friday thing. I'd love to do it like club-wide. It's gonna be like my first year. Mr. Walters was here. We did it there once. For couples early on, it was 30 minutes. Because that would, there just wasn't a lot. Sometimes
Because you
with
also
the
say
golf
you
and
want
stuff,
in
but
that
it's
side of the house, you definitely.
at first. And so I just did a big thing on, it's a really generic, my Google research of all, and it wasn't anything super successful. I just talked about who the thought was and seeing my work, just little things like that. And that's really cool. We have a really good history.
I know.
And I'm not even telling you how.
That's important.
Yeah, the important part is, that's the thing, I'm trying to say.
It's
And the history at the turn of the 20th century. This is like the center of the Roman universe west of the river.
You know, it makes me happy. I don't see so much of that. Because how we love this news. I know, I'm always happy. So now
That's
we
great.
are-
Wow, we'll keep in touch then.
But yeah.
Cheers.
Good to see you.
Good to
Thanks.
see you. Thanks.
I think, all right. Bye, thanks for coming.
Of course.
I want to know what this exercise was. I'm not upstairs with, oh, nothing. At one point that was the. I think she just. Yeah. I can't imagine. It's a lot. It's a big house. It's a big job. One thing I did say to them, I do firmly believe is they cannot everything they're gonna put into that house, they're gonna get out. It's a phenomenal house in a phenomenal location with a phenomenal yard. And the outside of that house is great. It's just what they did with it. I do think that even just the flow on the right side of the house as you go. It's horrible. Well, you know, all those fireplaces, I said, what architect, I mean, cricket. Mimi would know that should be in the center, those fire. I just don't understand. Well, I sort of feel like it was probably something that was just, she was busy and he was busy. Trying to be like, I'm city like them. You know, the Georgian house. I don't know. I don't know. I had to get over the pool room, and I have. But that's one of the reasons why I want to make that room, that tower room. That's going to be your living room. Plus, I said to her, you know, I gave her, which I will now do that, my mother's beautiful lace curtain. Oh, she showed me. Yes, she did. So I'm just going to take it out. I thought, you know, this would really do an elegant down. And you could carry the curtains and stuff all. But the direction they're going, it's just, and the other thing I said is, right. So you want to have displays or you want to have pictures of it? We can create that. And there's Brian, he was somebody, we have to remember that. Well, and I think it's a lot of figures. Me too. Me too. Hillary, you were awesome. Thanks for coming. You're welcome. I didn't ask you this, but we can take her. Do you do anything with the RNA? I mean, do you ever go over there and combine your historical resources? I don't like to. Yeah. We work closely, really closely with the British Isles Museum. No, they have a museum to the British Isles Museum. It's a little, they're in a mode where they are like, don't want you. They're like in world domination mode and they want to beat the USGA and everything, and it's not in this way. So they're kind of not nice to people. I wonder what they're gonna think about Mike Wan, because this will be kind of he's like Debbie Martin Slumbers is their CEO. Yeah, David sometimes will be like, hey, come to Scotland for like 2 months for sabbatical to work and like I'll bring the children. I'm like, no, I have a job. I mean, the USGA does, like they work very closely with the rules, very closely with the handicapping, a lot of other different areas. And we need to a certain extent. Well, it's an interesting evolution, I think. And I really like the way you gave us kind of the history, not only your own history, but the history of the museum. It's hard. We're gonna go home and you're gonna get into clothes and we're gonna go to Studio 41 and we're gonna go to Anna's and do all the fun things that we get to do because you don't have any children. Thanks,
I hope you have
Connie.
enough time to do
For all of that.
No, no time.
Hey, Mimi, thanks for coming. Good job, Steve. Oh, you got a gift, that's nice. What did you get? Have fun. Like, people to come, super nice. Why didn't your videos work around here? Thank you.
Ya sin clavos. ¿Dónde está tronando?
Le quito la pantalla de eso, así lo dejo con la chulita. Ahorita se los quito, se los doy. Se va a hacer trabajando, ¿no? ¿No lo vas a usar para mañana? Digo, para el domingo. Los guardo y los dejo ahí abajo. Ahorita decía, no sé si. Simón, también la otra la necesitas así, ¿no? Sí. ¿La otra también la necesitas así? Sí. Ya la dejo por ahí en la esquina y el domingo.
No, that's it. Vamos a ir con bueno, por primera. Y entonces,